Warning: the following video contains disturbing material that may be inappropriate for younger viewers. Parental discretion is advised. In 1983, a team of scientists conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists had theorized that a human without access to any senses or ways to perceive stimuli would be able to perceive the presence of God. They believed that the five senses clouded our awareness of eternity, and without them, a human could actually establish a connection with God by thought. An elderly man who claimed he had nothing left to live for was the only test subject to volunteer. To purge him of all his senses, the scientists performed a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connected to his brain was surgically removed. Although the test subject retained full muscular function, he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel, with no possible way to communicate or even sense the outside world. He was alone with his thoughts. Scientists monitored him as he spoke about his state of mind in jumbled, slurred sentences. After 4 days, the man claimed to be hearing hushed, unintelligible voices in his head. Assuming it was an onset of psychosis, the scientists paid little attention to the man's concerns. 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking to him, and even more, he could communicate back. The scientists were intrigued, but were not yet convinced until the subject started naming dead relatives. He repeated personal information to the scientists that only their dead spouses or parents could have known. At this point, a sizable portion of the scientists had left the study. After a week of conversing with the deceased through his thoughts, the subject became distressed, saying the voices were overwhelming. In every waking moment, his consciousness was bombarded by hundreds of voices that refused to leave him alone. He threw himself against the wall trying to elicit a pain response. He begged the scientists for sedatives so he could escape the voices by sleeping. This tactic worked for 3 days, until he started having severe night terrors. The subject reportedly said that he could see and hear the deceased in his dreams. Only a day later, the subject began to scream and claw at his non-functioning eyes, hoping to sense something in the physical world. The hysterical subject now said the voices of the dead were deafening and hostile, speaking of hell and the end of the world. At one point, he yelled, "No heaven, no forgiveness," for 5 hours straight. He constantly begged to be killed, but the scientists were convinced that he was close to establishing a connection with God. After another day, the subject could no longer form coherent sentences. Seemingly mad, he started to bite off chunks of his flesh from his arm. The scientists rushed into the test chamber and restrained him to a table so he could not kill himself. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggling and screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling as teardrops silently streaked across his face. For 2 weeks, the subject had to be manually rehydrated due to the constant crying. Eventually, he turned his head and, despite his blindness, made focused eye contact with the scientists for the first time in the study. He whispered, "I have spoken to God, and He's abandoned us," and his vital signs stopped. There was no apparent cause of death. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below letting me know if you like this stuff, because this is how I originally started YouTube. And if you do know creepypastas, let me know down below what or who is your favorite creepypasta. Until next time, guys, sweet dreams.